They called him the King of Wall Street. Grant Emerson thought he built an empire with his own 2 hands. He thought his wife Vivian was just a trophy, a quiet woman who spent too much money on gardening and charity. He was wrong. Dead wrong. When Grant served her divorce papers to run off with his young secretary, he thought he was cutting loose dead weight. He didn't know that every dollar in his bank account, every contract, and every breath his company took was authorized by a ghost. And that ghost was the woman sleeping right next to him. Watch closely, because when the Queen decides to stop playing nice, the King doesn't just lose his crown, he loses his head. The champagne in the crystal flute was vintage 1998 Dom Perignon, but to Vivian Emerson it tasted like battery acid. She stood near the velvet ropes of the grand ballroom at the Pierre Hotel in New York City, smoothing the invisible wrinkles on her emerald silk gown. The room was suffocatingly warm, filled with the scent of expensive cologne, roasted duck, and the distinct metallic smell of ambition. On the stage, bathed in a spotlight that seemed to worship him, stood her husband, Grant Emerson. "True innovation," Grant bellowed into the microphone, his voice dripping with the charisma that had charmed investors for a decade, "is not about waiting for opportunities. It is about seizing them by the throat." The crowd erupted in applause. Men in $5,000 suits nodded vigorously. Grant flashed his signature smile, the one that had graced the cover of Forbes and Fortune 3 times in the last 2 years. He held the Tech Visionary of the Decade award, aloft the heavy glass catching the light. "I built Ethereum Dynamics from a garage in Jersey." Grant continued, his eyes scanning the room, but sliding right past Vivian. "I coded the first algorithm. I negotiated the first buyout. I made the hard calls when everyone else was too scared to move." Vivian took a slow sip of her champagne. You couldn't even code a toaster to pop up toast. She thought, her face remaining a mask of polite adoration. A young waiter passed by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Vivian stopped him, not for food, but to check the time on the discreet Patek Philippe watch on her wrist. 8:42 p.m. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She didn't need to look to know who it was. It was likely Arthur Penhaligon, the senior partner at the Kensington Strategy Group, a firm that officially didn't exist on public records, but essentially owned half the intellectual property in Silicon Valley. She slid the phone out, shielding the screen. Message from Arthur. "Arthur, the Japanese merger is stalling. They want reassurance on the lithium supply chain. Grant is ignoring their emails." Vivian sighed. Of course Grant was ignoring them. Grant didn't understand supply chains. He understood photo ops and shaking hands. He thought the lithium deal was boring logistics. She typed back rapidly. "Tell Yamamoto that Protocol Phi guarantees the shipment from the Nevada subsidiary by Q3. Offer a 2% discount on the back end if they sign tonight. Do it under the silent partner authorization." She slid the phone back into her purse just as the applause died down. Grant was descending from the stage, swarmed by admirers. "Grant incredible speech. Grant about that IPO." Vivian watched him approach. He looked flushed with victory. He stopped in front of her, his eyes glassy with adrenaline and expensive scotch. "Did you hear that, Viv?" he asked, loosening his tie slightly. "They ate it up. The stock is going to jump 10 points tomorrow morning." "It was wonderful, Grant," Vivian said, her voice soft, practiced. "You looked very commanding." He patted her cheek, a gesture that felt more like he was petting a well-behaved dog than touching his wife of 12 years. "Try to look a little more alive, darling. You're standing there like a funeral arrangement. This is the biggest night of my life." I'm just tired, Grant. The charity auction took a lot out of me. He rolled his eyes. Right, the charity. Spending my money to save. What is it this week? One-eyed cats. Libraries for underprivileged schools, she corrected quietly. Whatever. Just smile. The photographer from Vanity Fair is coming over. As the camera flashed, blinding them both, Vivian felt a hand on her lower back. It wasn't Grant's. It was too low, too familiar. She turned slightly to see Sienna Cross, Etherion's new chief marketing officer, standing uncomfortably close to the couple. Sienna was 24, brilliant in a cutthroat sort of way, and wearing a dress that cost more than Vivian's first car. Congratulations, Mr. Emerson, Sienna purred, ignoring Vivian entirely. And Mrs. Emerson, lovely dress, very traditional. Thank you, Sienna, Vivian said, her tone cool. Grant, the investors from Dubai are waiting in the VIP lounge, Sienna said, touching Grant's arm. Her fingers lingered on his bicep for a second too long. They're dying to buy you a drink. Grant turned to Vivian, his expression dismissing her before he even spoke. Go home, Viv. This is business. You'll just be bored. I can wait, Vivian said. Don't be clingy. Grant snapped low enough that the photographer couldn't hear. Take the driver. I'll be late. Vivian watched them walk away. She saw the way Sienna leaned into him, the way Grant's hand hovered near her waist. She wasn't blind. She had known about Sienna for 3 months, just like she had known about the paralegal 2 years ago, and the PR consultant before that. She walked out of the ballroom, the cold New York air hitting her face as she stepped onto Fifth Avenue. The black town car was waiting. Home, Mrs. Emerson, the driver, an older man named Roberts, asked as he opened the door. Vivian paused, looking back at the golden glow of the hotel where her husband was celebrating a fortune he believed he owned. No, Roberts, she said, her voice changing. The softness was gone. The submissive wife tone vanished, replaced by the steel of a woman who ran billion-dollar negotiations via text message. Take me to the office, the private office on 42nd Street. Roberts nodded, not surprised. He was the only one on Grant's payroll who knew who actually signed the checks. Yes, ma'am. 3 weeks later, the blow finally came. It was a Tuesday morning. Vivian was in the sunroom of their Hamptons estate, trimming bonsai trees. It was a meditative practice she used to keep her rage from boiling over. Grant walked in. He wasn't wearing his usual suit. He was wearing casual golf attire, but his face was tight serious. He held a manila envelope in his hand. Vivian, he said, not wasting time on a greeting. Put the scissors down. We need to talk. Vivian snipped a small branch. I'm listening. He threw the envelope onto the glass table. It landed with a heavy slap. I want a divorce. Vivian didn't flinch. She carefully placed the shears on the table and wiped her hands on a cloth. She looked at the envelope, then at him. Is it Sienna? She asked calmly. Grant scoffed, pacing the room. It's not about another woman, Vivian. It's about us. I've outgrown this. I've outgrown you. Look at you. You're content pruning tiny trees while I'm changing the world. I need a partner who matches my ambition. Someone who understands the velocity of my life. Velocity, Vivian repeated. Is that what we're calling it? Don't make this difficult, Grant said, his voice hardening. I've had my lawyers draw this up. It's generous, considering. Vivian opened the envelope. She scanned the document. It was brutal. He was offering her the beach house a monthly stipend of $15,000 for 5 years, and she would have to sign an NDA regarding all company matters. In exchange, she would relinquish all claims to Ethereum Dynamics stock, the Manhattan penthouse, and the offshore accounts. "You're citing the prenup we signed 12 years ago," Vivian noted. "Ironclad," Grant said smugly. "You signed it, Vivian. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. Back then you were a broke art student, and I was a rising star. You have no claim to the empire I built." Vivian looked up. "You built?" "Yes, I built," Grant shouted, his face turning red. "I worked 18-hour days. I charmed the investors. I took the risks." "You took the credit," Vivian said softly. "Excuse me." Vivian stood up. "Who fixed the code for the Orion interface in 2018 when your engineering team was ready to quit? Who renegotiated the debt with the Swiss banks when you over-leveraged us in 2020? Who told you to buy into AI chips 3 years before anyone else even knew what they were?" Grant laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound. You think because I vented to you in bed and you gave some cute little suggestions that you're the reason for my success. You're delusional, Viv. You're a muse at best. A sounding board, not a CEO. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of coffee and arrogance. "Sign the papers, Vivian. If you fight me, I will bury you in legal fees until you're selling these little trees on the side of the road. I have the best lawyers in the city. I have the press. I have the money." Vivian looked at him. For the first time in years, she felt a genuine emotion toward him. It wasn't love, and it wasn't hate. It was pity. "You really believe that, don't you?" she whispered. "I know it," he said. "You have 48 hours to sign. I'm moving Sienna into the penthouse on Friday. I want you out by then." He turned and walked out of the sunroom, slamming the door so hard the glass panes rattled. Vivian stood in the silence for a long minute. She picked up the divorce papers and walked over to the shredder in the corner of the room. She fed the document into the machine, watching Grant's ironclad offer turn into confetti. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in a long time. "Arthur," she said when the line clicked open. "Vivian." The lawyer's voice was sharp. "Is it time?" "It's time," she said. "Initiate the dead man's switch protocol on Ethereum servers. Freeze the Cayman assets. And Arthur, yes, call the board of directors. Tell them the silent partner is calling an emergency meeting. Mandatory attendance." "And Grant?" Arthur asked. Vivian looked out the window at Grant, who was currently yelling at the gardener about the height of the hedges. "Don't tell him a thing," she said coldly. "Let him enjoy his last 48 hours as a rich man." The morning after the divorce demand, Grant Emerson arrived at Ethereum Dynamics, feeling invincible. The sun was bouncing off the glass facade of the 40-story building he believed was his kingdom. He whistled as he walked through the lobby, ignoring the security guard, Ralph, who had greeted him every morning for 8 years. Grant didn't have time for greetings. He was a single man now, or close enough to it, and the world was his oyster. He stepped into the private elevator, checking his reflection in the mirrored walls. He looked good. No, he looked expensive. When the doors slid open on the executive floor, Sienna Cross was already there. She was sitting at his assistant's desk, a power move displacing his actual assistant, Mrs. Higgins, who was currently relegated to a folding chair in the hallway, sorting mail. "Good morning, Sienna smirked, spinning in the chair. "I ordered the new furniture for the office, the Italian leather set. It cost $40,000, but I put it on the company black card." Grant chuckled, leaning over to kiss her. "You have expensive taste, I like that. It matches mine. Did you call the real estate agent?